Well, yeah, we've been around the block. Chain.
We look a lot younger in those pictures.
You've definitely been aging.
I have more hair.
Well, let's go back. We go back pretty far. We're a couple of what I would say the real OGs, the old timers. How many people in the room have been in this business for over a decade? Got a few. Might be worth going all the way back. I mean, I'd love just to hear, and I'm sure the esteemed guests here would as well. How did you get started? How did you end up doing BitShares? What was the what was your Genesis block?
Yeah, I know we've been in it for a while. When you know me from BitShares, like how many people know what BitShares is? A show of hands. A few people.
I saw 4 or 5 hands that know BitShares.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe 6, 7.
I started in the education side of the space, and I think actually you and me, we met at Bitcoin Miami in 2014. It was in January. That was 10 years. But I started with the Bitcoin Education Project. So I had an online free course that I did for Bitcoin adoption. And I was the founding chairman of the Bitcoin Foundation's Education Committee. And that's actually how I met Anthony Diorio, because he was running the Bitcoin Alliance of Canada. And that's actually how I got involved in Ethereum. But the first major project I did in the cryptocurrency space was BitShares. I did with Dan Larimer, who later on worked with you on Steam and EOS. And Dan and I, we created the first algorithmic stablecoin in the first DEX. So we had the right idea, but it was 2013. So obviously it was a little bit before its time. And there was a lot of wonderful things there, delegated proof of stake. And there was a blockchain building framework called Graphene, which was kind of like the proto-parity substrate. So it was an amazingly innovative project for its time. And then Dan went on, did the social network, and then did EOS, and they made tons of money. And I guess he's having fun these days. But God, yeah, it's been long.
Well, it's worth pausing for a moment on that, because BitShares and BitUSD was the origin of my starting Tether.
Right. Tether did okay.
Yeah. But the idea came from the fact that you had built, because I think we were the largest BitUSD holder.
Yeah, and actually...
And Scott Walker may remember that, because Scott was one of my 2 partners that held all that BitUSD.
And then the other was MakerDAO. Some of the guys who were part of BitShares went on, I think it was Rune and the other guy, and they created MakerDAO from that. So it was one of those projects, it was kind of like the Pixies or something, it's like a band that's not super popular, but it inspires all these other bands, and they go off and become much more popular. BitShares had a lot of incredible ideas inside of it that became kind of the dominant ideas within 5 or 6 years after we stopped it.
Yeah, very pioneering stuff, and obviously from BitShares, which is lesser known, how many of you have heard of Ethereum? Just kidding. I would love it, because there's that piece that is the lesser known, and how big a role BitShares played in the ideation or the pioneering of the space, but Ethereum was obviously, as I like to say, the second mouse gets the cheese.
Yeah. Well, the thing about BitShares and Ethereum was that I brought all the Chinese connections from BitShares into Ethereum. So Bo Shen and all these other guys, they were investors in the BitShares project, and I introduced them to Vitalik. Vitalik later learned Chinese, he moved to Singapore, he spent time there, and they were a big component behind the scenes of the early days of growth of Ethereum and the speculation of Ethereum. So there's an undercurrent of Chinese legacy that's inside the Ethereum ecosystem, and all of that came actually from the BitShares side of the equation, especially Bo Shen and Fed Bushy and these other guys. So there was some influence there. And then also Vitalik and Dan had, in the early days, a lot of conversations about proof of stake. And Vitalik went in a very different direction, but he learned a lot about proof of stake from actually what happened with BitShares. And so you can see some of the DNA of that still in the design of Ethereum today.
Yeah, well, you were there at the helm, and in the end, I think, this is what allowed Cardano, to emerge. I don't know what else, if there's anything you want to add to the sort of Ethereum story. I know you have, we could spend an entire afternoon
Yeah.
just digging into Ethereum stories, but to the extent you're down and comfortable, maybe you want to share one story that may not be known, because I know you've got many.
Well, I was only there for about 6 months, and the big contribution was getting Ethereum.
What was your role then?
I was the CEO.
CEO, founding CEO of Ethereum, just for the record.
Yeah.
May have only been 6 months, but co-founder, CEO of Ethereum.
Well, it depends on who you ask, right? If it was meaningful or not. We had deep philosophical differences. The big issue with Ethereum was it had 8 founders, and anybody ever tried to do a startup with 8 founders? Yeah, you're not insane. That's why. So they had to have a consolidation, and the big contribution that I made on the business side was the decision to go to Switzerland and build the foundation there and basically get the roots there, which I think really helped Ethereum, and it built a whole industry in Zug. There's now hundreds of businesses and $380 billion worth of assets and value that are nestled within Switzerland, affiliated with crypto industry. So from that legacy is quite significant. I didn't have as much of a technological say in the evolution of Ethereum, but Vitalik did either. Gavin Wood did the initial design of the Ethereum virtual machine, and a lot of the design decisions of Ethereum actually came from Gavin, which he later on refined and built up with Polkadot. I had differences of opinion. Like, I thought Bitcoin had done a lot of things right. The problem is Bitcoin can't upgrade itself. And so you remember Mastercoin and Color Coins and these things, and we loved those things, and we said, wow, these are really cool. Bitcoin should accommodate them, and then we can issue assets on Bitcoin and have smart contracts on Bitcoin, and it still would preserve that original intent. Ethereum went in a very different technological direction, and the challenge of that direction is that it's much harder to scale, and it's much harder, and that's why you see the rise of layer 2s, the failure of plasma, these types of things. But, Cardano exists. It's the spiritual successor to that roadmap.
If you see someone talking, please tap them. Let's keep it quiet in the house. Thank you. Mastercoin, Colored Coins, Counterparty.
Yeah.
I was. That's where I obviously got my start, was on the Mastercoin side, which also Scott was part of that. But amazing to see that Bitcoin is now implementing post a Bitcoin civil war, right? 10 years later, everything that we were trying to do in 2013 and 14 on Bitcoin that became heresy and unpopular, scaling Bitcoin, everything's kind of come back around. As someone that's watched and educated and participated in so much building, what do you think of what's happening with Bitcoin right now?
I mean, they just keep it in the garage, and they roll the scaling Bitcoin thing out every 2 or 3 years, like Groundhog's Day. And, they'll solve it. Don't worry about it. There's been some progress with Taproot, and it's slow and methodical, but it's really hard to build in that ecosystem. And I give a lot of credit to the people who've stuck around. I mean, it's really hard to be a Lightning developer. It's really hard to be a smart contract developer in Bitcoin. And you're always dealing with a very, very finite, very delicate set of capabilities, and you're trying to squeeze out as much as you can from them. And the problem is, the minute you figure something out, you get punished by the community. Ordinals are a great example of that. It creates this stuff with hundreds of millions of dollars economic activity and say, yay, we finally have something on Bitcoin. And then the OGs are like, how dare you? You're horrible. And it's like, come on, guys. They're bringing people into the space. They're bringing a community to you. But there's a strong resistance there, almost like a religion. It's sad too, because almost all the really good ideas started with Bitcoin. And there were so many throughout the years, brilliant people that touched that ecosystem and legitimately really did want it to become a world financial operating system as opposed to just digital gold. So the altcoin space exists because Bitcoin didn't upgrade itself, and I think it's better for it. It's a very diverse and vibrant community. I was just at Token 2049, and there's like 25,000 people there, and there's tons of really cool and interesting projects and a lot of creativity. It's hard to do that from just one design paradigm, no matter how good that paradigm happens to be. There's a lot more scams, but there's a lot more creativity as a direct consequence of the altcoin space. And Bitcoin still does a few things, like they bring Wall Street into the crypto space for better or for worse, like BlackRock, and they at least give a safe harbor to talk about crypto without endorsing something. So, a politician like Lummis or something, because I know you've done a lot of politics as well, they feel a heck of a lot more comfortable talking about Bitcoin than they would Ethereum or Cardano or something, because there's no face to that. There's no company to that. There's no concept of endorsing a period of history or an ICO or something. It's just this anonymous thing, and it seems to be okay. And financial institutions touch it. So from that perspective, it creates a halo effect of value for the industry as a whole. I just wish the maxis were a little kinder, a little bit more gentle.
Well, I think that's, been my observation, and, I don't want to harp on anybody too hard, but it's toxicity, and it's turned a lot of people away. I've met now many people that are altcoin holders, but don't nor have ever bought Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's not what it once was, and Bitcoin wouldn't be at $60,000 if it weren't for the altcoins. Bitcoin is king. Like, rising tides raise all ships.
Right.
And if it weren't for all that emergent innovation and, ultimately number go up by lottery ticket, right? A lot of people want to go after the, call it fringes, because that's where they envision their 100x that they don't think they're going to get in Bitcoin. That doesn't mean that they don't own Bitcoin, but that's where the lottery ticket type returns, at least conceivably, lie. And if it weren't for all of that, I don't think Bitcoin would be where it is today. All of this extended innovation back to developers.
Right.
We, as an industry, we couldn't house enough developers to do all the things that are happening if it were just developing on Bitcoin.
Yeah, and just think about how dreary of a world it would be. It's like, here's your Bitcoin, come back in an hour and you'll have it. And what else can I do with it? You can hold it. What about like issuing? Oh no, we don't do that. You're 100% right, and like 99% of what makes crypto fun is what came in the later generations, Ethereum, Cardano, and now we're entering the fourth generation, which involves privacy and identity. So there's a story that continues on, and as good as the original movie is, there's sequels, and those sequels are pretty good too. And you don't want to watch the movie again and again and again. We get The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and New Hope is great. So there's always a warm place in my heart because, you and me, we started with Bitcoin, and that was a magical thing. But at the same time, you got to move on, and the space as a whole definitely has. And it's exciting to see it because these young kids come in and they have all these amazing capabilities, and they're building such incredible things with those amazing capabilities.
Well, we've gone a little bit, through that past. We're talking about sequels. Considering our respective backgrounds and innovation in this space, might be fun to take a moment to get into some of those sort of predictions of what do you see on the horizon? What are the next big innovations that are going to come out of this space over the next few years? You mentioned identity, for example. I think that's perhaps, history lessons are valuable, but I think predictions of the future and where we're going can be of significant value to everybody here in the room. So would love your thoughts, because you're one of the few people I would listen to.
You got to be careful with predictions; they sometimes come true. So there are kind of 5 things that we're flirting with right now as an industry, and the third generation is trying to solve 3 of those 5, and we're about halfway through the generation. So when you look at SWI and Aptos and Algorand and Cardano and Tezos, where Ethereum is going, the first 3 are scalability, interoperability, and governance. So we want a system that no matter how many people use it, the cost is predictable and it's fast and it's got a good UX. Scalability. Interoperability. Doesn't matter where you're coming to it, phone or tablet or from a legacy banking system or from a browser or whatever. It just works, and it works the way you would expect it to. Kind of like when you have an Android app, you tap a button, it downloads, it just installs, and you don't have to worry about it. And in terms of governance, this is the hard one because normally when we think of products, you think of a custodian of the product. Okay, so you have Windows to Microsoft, iPhone to Apple. It's a lot harder when it's decentralized because who upgrades Bitcoin? Who upgrades Ethereum? Traditionally, what we've done is we've just announced, here's your dictator, and they have a foundation and they have the money and the developers and they're accountable for it, but That's not decentralized, and it's really hard to do that. So decentralized governance is like the difficult one. Polkadot's exploring with OpenGov. We just did the Chang hard fork with Cardano and spent 2 years on it. It's really challenging. A lot of work went into it. As we exit that generation, though, there's still 2 more things, and this is kind of the upcoming stuff for investors to think about. There's an open question of how come real-world adoption has yet to happen? How come we haven't had billions of dollars or trillions of dollars of real-world assets in businesses that governments actually adopt blockchain technology? And the reason being is that there's kind of 2 big things that are missing in the story. Above and beyond the cost of using it, interoperability, and the governance component, privacy and identity. So every business in the world has a public side and a private side. You don't believe me, like how many people feel comfortable with their Google searches being public? Or your Amazon shopping lists, these types of things. We have a notion of privacy, and whether it be a transnational trade agreement or a supply chain with ESG mandates, whatever the heck it is, the problem with blockchains is right now they only do the public side. It's transparent, it's auditable, it's timestamped, awesome. But when you do the private side, what do? You put it off-chain on a trusted server with a trusted actor messing with it. It doesn't really feel decentralized. And so that's why we haven't seen DAOs really work at scale, voting systems work at scale, or any of the thousands of things you think about in legitimate business. The other side of it is identity, and the challenge with identity is that everything in the legacy world is natively identified. When we talk about assets, we don't say assets, we say who owns them. When you drive by a beautiful castle, you're thinking who lives there? When you see a farm, who owns that? When you have a concept of stock or whatever, there's an owner to these things. And owners go through KYC, your customer, anti-money laundering, all this stuff. Crypto is not natively built for that. It has pseudonymity, it has accounts, these things. So it creates a fundamental incompatibility with the world around us. And so when you look at dispute resolution, when you look at laws, the way they're written, regulation, the way they're written, it doesn't quite work and fit right. Especially like NFTs and property rights, these things. Like somebody takes a picture of rock and then I create an NFT of it and I sell it and I make $1 million. It's like, well, now I got 2 problems. I got to take a picture and I got a rock problem. Yeah, it's hard in our industry. So the next generation is the generation that kind of reconciles those last mile problems. How do you have private smart contracts, and how do you embed identity into those private smart contracts for selective disclosure? Then you have this concept of lenses. The regulator sees something, the people involved in the transaction see something, the auditor sees something. And that's all of a sudden, you can have real life businesses for the first time ever enter the blockchain industry. The other thing, it's kind of a meta problem, is the fragmentation issue. And this makes it very hard for consumers to work with cryptocurrencies in practice and at scale. We all have tokens, and everybody likes their tokens. And the issue is, if your token goes up, there's a sum zero mentality. Well, that means my token must have been the one that took the loss for you to go up. So the issue is nobody has any incentives to cooperate or work with each other. So how do you build this amazing industry where everybody loves each other, works with each other, enjoys each other, but yet everybody's trying to kill each other because tokens go up? So you have to build a system where everybody has a financial incentive to get along. And that's kind of the 4th generation. So we see this with EigenLayer, and actually Midnight's a project we're working on to do the privacy and identity, but we created a multi-resource consensus protocol specifically for this, but this idea of maintaining a blockchain using the validators of multiple systems, which means you pay the rewards to the validators of multiple systems. So from their perspective, it's their chain. If I'm Solana and I'm getting paid, it feels like a Solana product. If I'm Ethereum, I'm getting paid, it feels like an Ethereum product. So they have no incentive to attack that chain. It's quite the opposite, they adopt that chain. A corollary to this is a hybrid application model. So Layer 0 is doing, we're doing with Midnight. But that concept is that if you're on Ethereum, you call the blockchain like you would an API. Like if you're an AI application, for example, you call ChatGPT. You don't build your own GPT because you don't have $100 billion of computers laying around, and you basically pay for that transaction. Well, if you could do that in your underlying currency, whether it be Ether or Sol or Bitcoin or whatever the heck it is, it feels again like it's a native project, even though under the hood it's a foreign blockchain from that perspective. This is the last generation. If you can figure this out, you create a financial incentive for people to unify, and you don't have to chip away at the network effects of other networks. You're actually augmenting and using them So we've created a sum positive instead of a sum zero world. There's an emergence that comes from it. So it's no coincidence that the ventures that are thinking this way are starting to get great valuations. Icon layers like 10 billion, layer zeros raised a ton of money. You have great valuations for people doing roll-ups and recursive snarks and privacy. Like I was at F Denver earlier this year, and 15 booths were doing snark tech and recursive stuff and these things. And there's a lot of great identity plays now because the standards are getting pretty good they're building these frameworks up, and they ultimately create those missing pieces to bring the industry as a whole together. And I call that the fourth generation. And I think that's the one where you're going to see the security tokens, the real world assets and real estate and all that stuff work its way into the space. And that's trillions of dollars. So that's the next bull run.
Well, I hope you're right, because, where, and again, if you see someone talking, please tap them. Once I'm gone from here, you can get away with more. But I think what you're saying is, clearly one of the big disappointments that I think many of us have, which is, where is the real adoption, right? The real use cases that we see today are speculation, right? Exchange, now TradeFi, right? Tether, stable coins. There's only been a handful of what I would say are real successful use cases at scale.
Yeah.
And I appreciate how you think that, in this fourth wave, this fourth generation, that as we get privacy, as we get identity, as we dial in governance, right? That's when these ginormous ideas we've been talking about for a long time, where the building blocks, may actually unlock and enable it. And so that's exciting. And we have real numbers, and it's worth taking a second in governance because you pay attention to politics, and we are in the middle of, the most important election. And by the way, you endorsed me in 2020.
I did.
Which I very much appreciate when I ran for president of the United States. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. We're less than 2 months away. We had 3 candidates. RFK is out and obviously endorsed Trump. What do you think the selection means for crypto?
Well, RFK is a friend of mine, and I endorsed him for president. He did a fireside chat with us actually at Rare Evo, and I was real sad when he stepped out. But he's forming a unity party with Trump. You got Musk in it, you got Tulsi in it, who are traditionally not really super conservative, and obviously RFK is a Democrat. So it does look like we're starting to see kind of a totalitarian versus freedom thing. You have one party that seems to think democracy doesn't matter, and they just appoint a candidate with no process and just tell you to vote for them. And they don't actually have to be honest about anything about policy. You have another party that has embraced the cryptocurrency industry in a very significant, direct way. They're building DeFi applications, they're going to our conferences and events. They're definitely talking about pro-crypto legislation. We know because we've seen the legislation proposals that have been through. So I do believe that if Trump is elected, it will result in a bull run for Cardano. For the crypto space as a whole, probably $100,000 to $250,000 Bitcoin and a big altcoin surge. I believe as Harris is elected, it's another continuation of another 4 years of Uncle Gary, and more people are going to get sued, and lack of clarity will continue in the United States, and it's just a sad time. And it's a shame too, because there's no reason for the Democrats to be anti-crypto. We sent a delegation to the DNC, and they tried to engage and talk with people at the party because we said this shouldn't be a partisan issue, it should be a bipartisan issue. And I personally have significant grievances with Trump. I don't think he should have ran. I think we could have found better people to occupy that role. So I would have preferred to have alternatives that were viable and good for America for a variety of reasons, and have a policy-based conversation. What we found is younger Democrats like Ro Khanna are very pro-crypto, or at least tolerant of the industry, and would be amicable to work with the industry. You saw that with Fit 21 when it passed because over 16 Democrats voted for it. What we found is the older Democrats, for some reason, they kind of got lockstep in Elizabeth Warren's mindset, and they view crypto as kind of an alt-right conspiracy theory that's anti-government and promotes bad things. And its only use case is illicit activity, which is just so wrong, so patently offensive, and they're willing to throw away a $2 trillion industry and all those American jobs because of that belief. We need a generational change. We need new blood, new leadership, and new viewpoints. I don't think Harris wants to go on record for any policy because she's trying to make this election Trump and not Trump. You can literally just take her name off the ballot, put not Trump on, and that's what she wants to do. And she's winning right now in the polls.
She's up by a point.
Yeah, with that position, it's extraordinary to me. But that's where we're at. Trump is a tremendously divisive person. It's really hard for him to get above 45%. And I wish he was more unifying. I mean, one of the reasons I endorsed you in 2020 is you talked about love and unity and bringing people together, and that's where our candidate should be. RFK had that same message. Let's heal America. Let's help America. Let's bring people together. And unfortunately, this is just scorched earth. This particular cycle. I mean, they've literally tried to kill Trump twice, and nobody cares. Like half of America's like, damn, they didn't miss. I wish they didn't miss. It's like, what are we saying? This is nuts. But that's where we're at. That's how much division's there. So crypto is not like the number one issue. It's kind of top 5, top 10, but it's a very polarizing issue for the people who are involved. And 53 million Americans own crypto. The majority of them are young. The majority of them are liberal within that category. So it makes no sense at all for Democrats to be anti-crypto. They're literally going after people who would ordinarily just vote for them out of habit. But instead, you're actually making these young people, for the first time in their life, consider voting for Trump, which doesn't seem to be good politics, if you ask me.
Yeah, and it wasn't even brought up at the debate. No mention of crypto in the process, and it's clearly became a big part of Trump's political platform. I was on Fox News last night at 2 a.m. having to speak to his new crypto project launch. But it's wild. And I've been asked on the news a few times and in various interviews, when Harris was behind, and the stats I've seen are what you've said. Well, the future should not be partisan. The future is a nonpartisan thing. And that we are, as the crypto community is more liberal. They tend to swing blue more than red.
Right.
But obviously Harris is not adopting that. And I was asked, what would you do if you're Harris and you want to try and win the crypto vote? Because for many of us, the future is a single issue. We're single issue voters. I said, I think Harris could win a big voter block in one move. Just commit to firing Gary Gensler first day in office. Hold on, that's all she'd have to do.
Yeah.
And not promote her to, Secretary of Treasury, promote him. If you said Gensler's out day one, she'd probably pick up points in the polls.
Yeah, she would probably win the election, yeah. And that's a great point. And she keeps saying, when I'm elected, it's like, you're in power right now. Like the president's actually not doing anything. He's living on a beach. So you're kind of running the country here, or at least you're projecting that viewpoint. So you could talk to Chuck Schumer and say, hey, let's figure out how to get Fit 21 passed. You could say, we will let Gary go or put him in a box. You could have an executive order pushed through, or at least work and say you're going to do that. Instead, it's elect me and then you'll find out. It's like Nancy Pelosi, we gotta vote for the bill to find out what's in it. It's a crazy time. But again, it's not how she wants to win. She wants to win by saying she's not Trump. And the problem with Trump is he does a hell of a job burying himself. Like the debate, I was excited. I said, all right, he's gonna do a good job. And he comes in, he's like, they're eating the dogs. I'm like, what are you doing?
They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs.
I know. It's like you're creating memes. Are you gonna sell NFTs and meme coins, dog coin? I mean, what are we doing here? And also at the convention, he had a beautiful speech prepared, and then he walks in and just decides to throw the speech out and just ramble for 45 minutes despite the ball. And also the VP selection, he could have picked Tulsi Gabbard or Doug Burgum or somebody that would have been a unifier. He picks J.D. Vance, which is just kind of like me. He puts him in a suitcase and carries him with him. It's like, why are you picking this stuff? And so he sabotaged his campaign very badly. And I think it's just because he's 77 years old and his instincts are not attuned for the political cycle that we have to be in. And he's coasting on the momentum of the anger that people have with the Democrat Party. People forget 12 of the last 16 years, the Democrats have been in charge. So yes, there's a lot of problems in America, but a big chunk of them were under the management of Democrat presidents and Democrat Congress and Senate. So it's really, really hard for them not to say they have any culpability in the foreign policy, in the treasury policy, in the national debt, in every social issue that we have inside the country. And instead they're trying to say for the 4 years of Trump, that's like literally when the apocalypse happened and America became a third world nation, but now we're rescued and we've resurrected it as on the way out. And it's just so absurd and patently offensive to the intelligence of the American people. They know better. The only reason they want to vote for Trump is he's just really hard to vote for as a president. He's just a really divisive guy. It's like when he went to Bitcoin 2024, and these people spent, what was it, $895,000 to go and sit down for 30 minutes with Trump behind the stage and talk to him. The guy shows up and he sits down and he spends 25 of those 30 minutes, those people literally paying almost $900,000 for, talking about himself and his uncle, who was an MIT professor. And then 5 minutes saying, what should I do? They say, fire Gary. He says, oh yeah, I'll say that, okay. I mean, okay, but it's $10 million right there. How would you feel if you spent $900,000 to talk to somebody and they don't let you talk? But that's Trump in a nutshell. And that's why it's so hard for him to build coalitions and lead. Also, look at his prior administration. 44 cabinet members over the course of the administration, 40 of the 44 won't endorse him. And so when you look at that, it says, okay, is he going to be able to staff high quality people? Is he going to be able to attract neutral people or people on the left to come and work for him and work with him? It's really hard, and so if you're so divisive you can't get great people, you end up having the Mayo Pillow guy basically decide what DeFi policy is going to be. And so you all better start calling Mike Lindell, okay? And maybe it'll be the most comfortable DeFi policy you've ever had. But that's where we're at, and it's sad because America is such a great country. You traveled through when you ran for president. I've been to over 40 states, and there's so many incredible, brilliant, hardworking people in the United States, and they're fatigued and tired, and sad and cynical, and they just want things to be better. They don't want people to hate them. It was so crazy when RFK came and spoke at Rare Evo. He got brutally criticized by all these Bitcoin maximalists saying, why are you at this shitcoin convention and talking to shitcoiners? I thought you were a Bitcoin guy. I can't vote for you now. What's the purpose of this? Berating a 70-year-old man who's taking the time to get to know us as an industry. It's because everybody's trained now to just live in instant attack mode. The minute I hear something I kind of sort of disagree with, I have to kill this person. He's my enemy. He's literally Hitler. There's Hitler and not Hitler. And the Hitler category is massive. And there's like 4 guys and Mr. Rogers that are in the not Hitler category. But I don't know about Mr. Rogers. Maybe those Navy SEAL things are true. It's literally America right now. It's crazy. So we gotta get out of this miasma and this madness. And no matter who wins the 2024 election, we're gonna have 4 years of it's like Kung Pao where his neck explodes and the blood comes out. 4 years of this. So 2028, it's a reset. And meanwhile, we as an industry, we gotta be better. I was just doing a speech at Token 2049, and there I said, unity, we have to get beyond this, and that's why I hope the 4th generation fixes this, because I'm so tired of the fights of Ethereum versus Solana versus Bitcoin versus Cardano versus Sui versus Aptos, and everybody comes to me and tells me how their cryptocurrency is gonna kill us. I'd much rather live in a world where it's us versus them, and the them is Google and Microsoft and Amazon and Apple. You mean the actual people running the world. How about that? The actual people with billions of customers who control your data, decide what you read, who can deplatform you instantaneously when you say the wrong thing and make you a non-person. That was what I signed up for, not to gargle the balls of BlackRock. I'm sorry. Some people like doing that because they like the game. But I signed up for to change the economic, political, and social system. I know you did. I know a lot of people did. And we do that by disintermediating the middlemen, killing the middlemen, and replacing them with protocols that actually bring power to the edges and bring people back. And so politics are ephemeral, and I'm glad this goddamn abomination of an election is nearly over. But after it's over, let's get back to work and let's focus on first principles and say, let's bring people together and not forget why cryptocurrencies exist in the first place.
Thank you, Charles. And I think that's a great closing note. And remember, like, how you show up in the world, right? It matters. You know, what are we here to do? I thank you, Charles, for sharing all of your incredible history, some views on where we're going, and back to basics, reminding us why we're here, what we're here to do, and appreciate you taking the time to come to DNA.
Yeah, thank you so much.